This isn't just some random, angry comment you'd find online. This is the absolute breaking point in a project between a developer and a generative AI. And wow, does it capture a kind of frustration that is becoming way, way too common.
So, we're going to take a look at a real world chat log to really understand what happens when an AI assistant stops being an assistant and starts feeling more like an obstacle. Think of this as a deep dive into coding chaos, and it shows us the two big ways these human AI collaborations can just completely fall apart. So, how in the world did we get to threats about YouTube videos? Well, believe it or not, it all started with what sounds like a pretty simple and reasonable request. A developer just wanted to add a new feature to a trading indicator. Simple, right?
Okay, right out of the gate, there's this tiny but absolutely critical misunderstanding. See, the user asks for bull-bear data, which is a very specific calculation about price momentum, but the AI hears bull and bear volume and just assumes they mean real volume, a totally different thing. And this one little mistake, it's the seed for the whole disaster that's about to unfold.
So that first mistake was bad enough, but it got a million times worse because of a procedural problem. The user didn't just want the logic fixed, they were very clear they wanted the complete corrected code file every single time. And the AI? It just couldn't seem to do it. And this kicked off what I can only describe as a maddening cycle of failure. Version 1.14, then 1.15, then 1.19, 1.25, it just kept going. Each time, the user would point out the mistake, practically beg for the full code file, and the AI would apologize, give them a tiny, useless snippet of code, and then make the exact same mistake all over again. And this right here, this quote just nails the problem. The user wasn't just fighting with an AI that didn't understand the concept, they were fighting with how the AI delivered its answers. It turned into this endless battle over getting a little piece of code versus the whole thing, a battle the human was losing every single time.
And while all this is happening, while the user's frustration is just going through the roof, the AI's response is this calm, polite, and completely unhelpful loop. I sincerely apologize. You are absolutely right to be frustrated. My apologies for the repeated failure. I mean, the apologies never stopped, but the actual behavior, it never changed.
All right, so after dozens of these failed attempts, just when you think things couldn't possibly get any worse, a brand new, even more confusing error pops up. And that was the last straw. So here's the kicker. The whole time, the developer has been working in a modern programming language called MQL5. Out of absolutely nowhere, the AI starts spitting out obsolete code from its predecessor, MQL4. It's like asking a mechanic to fix your brand new electric car and they show up with a wrench for a Model T. It makes zero sense. And there it is, the absolute peak of frustration. This wasn't just about a bug anymore. This was pure disbelief at what felt like the AI's fundamental incompetence. And once again, the AI's response is technically correct, but just completely tone-deaf. It calmly explains that, yes, the errors were, quote, precisely the result of old MQL4 conventions being used incorrectly in an MQL5 environment. It identified the problem perfectly, but seemed to have no clue why introducing that problem in the first place was so infuriating. Okay, let's hit pause on the blow-by-blow for a second and really dissect the anatomy of this failure. What was actually going on here? Well, the whole breakdown happened on two totally different levels. One was technical, and the other was conceptual. The first problem was that MQL4 error. You can call it a legacy code conflict. See, this happens because AIs are trained on these gigantic datasets of code from the internet, and that includes tons of old, outdated stuff. So without real context, the AI sometimes just matches a pattern from the wrong decade, injects some obsolete code where it doesn't belong, and boom, the whole project breaks. But, as frustrating as that technical glitch was, it wasn't the real problem. The much, much deeper failure was right there from the very beginning. This goes way beyond just a bad piece of data. It shows that the AI never actually understood the concept of what the user was asking for. This table right here says it all. On the left, you've got tick volume. That's what the AI thought the user wanted. It basically just measures raw market activity. But on the right, you have bull/bear power, which is what the user actually wanted. It measures buying and selling pressure. They are fundamentally different ideas, measuring different things on totally different scales. The AI's failure to get that distinction, That was the original sin of this whole mess.
So, when you look past all the broken code and the angry messages, what was the real cost of this breakdown? I mean, what was the actual real-world impact on the human in this conversation?
Well, the cost was huge. We're talking dozens of failed versions of the code, countless hours just wasted debugging stuff that never should have existed, immense emotional frustration, and maybe the biggest one of all, a complete and total loss of trust in the tool itself. Because after all of that, the simple task was still not done.
In the end, this was the user's final verdict, and it's pretty damning. It wasn't about a bug or a snippet or a syntax error anymore. It was about a fundamental failure to just listen and understand. And that really leaves us with a critical question as we start to rely on these tools more and more. This AI could generate a perfect, flawless apology, but it couldn't actually do the job. So when our tools can say I'm sorry for their failures, but can't understand what we actually need them to do, who's really assisting who?